Recently, we've seen a lot of new world records, but I noticed something. Almost all of these guys are American. When looking at the world records today, the majority of world records are held from someone in the United States. Actually, 73% of them. But this wasn't always the case. Back in 2012, we only held world records in one event. Can you guess what it was? It was 6x6. Thanks Kevin for keeping us in it. Here's a graph showing the WR percentage belonging to the US. You can see that in 1982, we had 100% of all the WRs obviously, because 2x3 was the only event. But since then it has fluctuated quite a bit. We had a peak at almost 50% in 2006, but hit some lows after then, having as low as 8% or 6% of WRs. Since then, we've been on a mostly upward trend, and here we are today. If you assume we follow this upward trend from the last 10 years, we actually will have all the world records in 2027. But if you look at the trend for the last 6 years, this happens even quicker, and we'll have all the records by 2025. So, is this realistic? Can the United States get every single WCA record? Before we even think about getting the rest of the world records, can we defend the records that we currently hold? First off would be 2x2 average. It's pretty crazy how far ahead the United States is in this event just because of Zayn Kanani, with an insane 21 best results in the entire world. Honestly, no one's really even on his level. With 3x3, we just got the record back with a tied 4.86 average by Max Park, and with how fast this average is, I don't think it'll be beaten for a while. There are people outside the US that have potential to get this record. However, this record is already pretty insane for Max and Timon, so it might take a while for someone outside the US to beat this. Next, I think 4x4, 5x5, 6x6, and 7x7 are also pretty easy to defend, and that's just because Max Park carries us in all these big cube events. In 4x4, he has the best 13 results, in 5x5 he has the best 11 results, in 6x6 he has the best 7 results, and in 7x7 he has the best 11 results, having a record by over 10 seconds. In terms of single, it gets a bit closer. However, with some luck, I believe Max Park can also beat all of these single WRs, in case someone else from another country does get them. The blind events also safely belong to the US. Tommy Cherry is just dominating 3 blind right now with the WR single and average, but it does get pretty close with Elliott from Canada being under a second away from him in single and average. However, at Tommy's level, I think he can beat both of them if somehow he lost these records. In addition, the US has plenty of other fast 3 blind solvers that all have potential for this record. In 4 blind and 5 blind, we're just absolutely carried by Stanley Chappell. For example, in 4 blind single, he has the best 22 results and beats the next best person by over 20 seconds. However, things are getting a bit closer. There are some more up and coming big blind solvers, like Hill Peng Yong Feng. I still think Stanley will hold these records for a while, but because I think other people are improving faster, the US might lose this record in the future, but I don't think anytime in the near future. Multi-blind is also an event that the US dominates, with Graham Siggins having the best 12 results, and he beats the next best multi-blind solver by 11 points. There is another multi-blind solver who is also really good, who is Ro Hessler, who is from the US but unfortunately doesn't have the greatest results officially. But if he does pull off what he does at home in competition, the record will still stay in the US. The US has both records for square one as well. Max Shaw's 5.02 square one average is insane, as I mentioned in many videos, and that won't be beaten by anyone in the US or anyone else, I don't think, for a while. The single was held by Samir, but honestly it's quite bad, so I do assume that this will be beaten quite soon. And since the United States has so many square one competitions and so many great square one solvers, I think the next single WR for square one will also go to the US. Scube is another event that's dominated by Zayn. He holds a single WR of 0.81, which I don't think will be beaten in a while. And then for average, Zayn holds the 3 best Scube results, beating the next best by 0.23. In addition, another amazing Scube solver is Card Kukala, who's also from the US. So at the rare chance that we do lose this record, we have 2 amazing solvers that can bring it back for us. Then there's OH. Max Parks holds a single WR, and Patrick Pont, also from the US, holds the average WR. So with Max and Patrick, they hold the 5 best results for OH average. But the more worrying thing about this event for the US is Fami, who is an incredible OH solver from Indonesia. He has the 6 best results, and has incredible times at home. Crazy times like 6 averages and low 7 averages of 12. In competition, he hasn't quite been able to get those times, but if he does, he's going to be quite ahead of the rest of the world. The last record the US holds is Fmc average by Kel Shun. He has a 21 average, which is 0.67 lower than the second best. Recently there has been more good FMC solvers coming up. However, the 21 average I would say is still relatively safe. Now knowing that we can probably defend most of our WRs, what world records is the US missing? There are a few records that I think are doable to get. First off, 2x2 single, which is still held by Maciej from Poland with a 0.49. Obviously this is very scramble dependent, but I think we can do this one. Luke Garrett just recently got a 0.51 single on 2x2, which was 5 moves. Imagine if you got a 4 mover, then pretty much that would be WR. Even more recently, Zayn Kanadi got a .50 2x2 single, and this was also 5 moves. Even though this is very luck dependent, I think having the best 2x2 solver in the US is very helpful. And we're literally as close as you can get to this record. Then there's Pyraminx. This one, the single and average are both held by people outside the US. For Pyraminx, I don't think it's too far-fetched. There's a lot of great Pyraminx solvers in the US. And this year, we actually had the former Pyraminx world record average. So with a good set of scrambles and one of the many great Pyraminx solvers in the US, sub 1.66 is not too far-fetched. For the single, once again, it is luck dependent, but I think that's also pretty doable with a lot of great Pyraminx solvers in this country. All it'll take is some good scrambles, so pretty much Polish scrambles. Another single WR we don't have is Clock, with Yunha Lu having a 2.87 single. This one I think is more doable than you might think. I think recently Visual got a 3.0 Clock DNF, showing that with maybe some luck and some really good turning, this record is possible. And having one of the best clock solvers in the world, Caleb, who uses the best clock method, is also going to be quite helpful for getting this record. We also just recently lost the clock WR average to Jacob Chambers with an incredible 3.56 average, beating Caleb by 1/4 of a second. While that result is quite amazing, I think it's still beatable. We have plenty of great clock solvers in the US, including obviously Caleb, but also people like Brendan, who recently also got a sub 4 average with accounting 4. So for Clock, even though the records seem pretty far away, I think the US has a great shot of getting them both. Then a more difficult one is 3x3. We don't have the single, but I think the single is pretty luck dependent and is doable. We have the second and third best results in 3x3 single, and there's plenty of 3x3 solvers in the US that are so good, like Max and Maddie. And with Maddie, he actually did break this 3x3 WR at a competition, but it was unofficial. But that just shows that the 3.47 is not that far off, and we can see it beaten pretty soon, and very likely by an American. For Pyraminx, the WR average is by Leandro Martin Lopez, and the single is by Juan Pablo Honqui, both from South America. And Pyraminx isn't really an event that the United States is that great at. Only one American is competitive at the top level, and that will be Nicholas Nang. And he's over a second away from the average world record, and over a second from the single WR. For getting the single, Nicholas is actually second in the world. So with some good luck, it's pretty difficult, but it is possible. Average-wise would be a bit more difficult. If you look at the Pyraminx top results, the top 9 are all non-Americans. However, Nicholas can definitely pull off time sub WR average, as unofficially he's broken the WR plenty of times. So while it's difficult, him getting mega average is doable, but if Leandro and Tristan get better Pyraminx results, as they've shown unofficially, the Pyraminx world record average might be out of reach for a while. And finally, a really difficult one would be Fmc Single, which currently is 16. Beating this single is really difficult. To get a scramble that's 15 optimal, I think that only happens 1 in 500 solves. And plus, if you get an optimal 15 scramble, the chances that you'll find that exact solution is also quite low. So I think if the US gets this record, it has to be tying the 16. Tying this record is still very difficult. Not only do you need a scramble that's 16 moves optimal or less, but you also have to find the moves to get to that scramble, with your solution just matching up enough blocks or a crazy cancellation to make everything come together to 16 moves. So pretty much summarizing this video, the US can probably defend most of their WRs, but for getting the rest of the world records, it's going to be quite difficult, and especially the singles. However, maybe a more realistic goal is, can the US get all the average WRs? This is much more doable, but still pretty difficult. But who knows, back in 2012 when the US only held WRs in one event, who would have predicted that 10 years later, we would hold 73% of all the WRs in the WCA. And I don't think anything like this would happen anytime in the future ever, with any country. So how much longer can this upward trend last? And can we get the WR averages for every WCA event? To all the fast solvers in the United States specializing in Clock, Pyraminx, and Pyraminx, no pressure.